The Committee on Military, Veterans, and Homeland Security will come to order. Good afternoon, Mr. Clerk. Would you please call attendance roll?
Chair LaFave.
Here.
Representatives Beeler.
Here.
Eisen.
Here.
Bazat.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Jones.
Present.
Coleman.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Steenland.
Here.
Mr. Chair, quorum of the committee is present.
I will entertain a motion to adopt the April 13th committee meeting minutes from Representative and Vice Chair Jones. Any opposition or amendments to the committee meeting minutes? Without objection, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Okay, let's start committee today with House Resolution 55. Representative Fink, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the committee for hearing me this morning. In Washington, it is in vogue to contemplate any method possible to restrict the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Current ideas include directly regulating the manufacturing of firearms and adopting tax rates which would destroy the firearms industry in the United States, as well as the ability of law-abiding Americans everywhere to possess commonly owned firearms, accessories, and ammunition. There is great danger in regarding any right protected by our Constitution as lesser than the others. Deciding that the right to keep and bear arms is disfavored and therefore worthy of less vigilant defense than other rights is unwise according to the counsel of both logic and experience. Logically, how can we say we will protect the rights guaranteed in the other parts of the Constitution if the Second Amendment's protections are undermined? For instance, would any of us accept a special tax designed to make written publications artificially expensive simply because the government does not like the free exchange of ideas? Does anyone believe that modern life has obviated the need for a robust interpretation of the Fourth Amendment's privacy protections? Without a consistent reading of the Constitution, all of our civil rights are imperiled. As for experience, we have seen both in the United States and elsewhere that disarming the populace, especially ethnic and religious minorities, is a common tool of oppression. That is because the right to keep and bear arms is implicit in the notion of self-government. To be a citizen in a republic is to bear the burden of responsibility of exercising the rights protected by our law in a manner consistent with public safety and the preservation of liberty. This truth was recognized by Frederick Douglass, who observed that the liberties of the American people were dependent upon the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box, that without these no class of people could live and flourish in this country. American government is organized in a way to preserve the liberties that Douglass spent his life trying to extend to all Americans. The peculiar notion of divided sovereignty is a part of our constitutional system, which is designed to prevent any level of government from acquiring too much power over the people. In Prince v. United States, the U.S. Supreme Court has said that although the states surrendered many of their powers to the new federal government, they retained a residuary and inviolable sovereignty that is reflected throughout the Constitution's text. Because of the sovereignty retained by the states, the court said that the federal government may not compel states to enact or administer any federal regulatory program. The Ninth Amendment takes notice of the fact that the government does not confer our fundamental rights to us, but is a structure built to protect the rights inherent in humankind. And the 10th Amendment affirms the undeniable notion that under our Constitution, the federal government is one of enumerated and hence limited powers. I bring this resolution to stand with the people of Michigan against those who would use the federal government both to infringe upon our right to keep and bear arms and to exceed the powers enumerated in the Constitution in order to perform functions which are proper to state government. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Eisen has a question.
Are you familiar with H.R. 227? We passed a similar resolution in 2019 declaring Michigan a Second Amendment state, and we would stand against any new gun control measures. You familiar with that?
I haven't read it, no.
Okay. I just want to know if we compared yours to that one, what was the big difference?
I haven't looked at a previous resolution.
Okay. Then it was done. It's a House bill, House Resolution 227. I just wondered what would the difference be if we're just kind of reminding people that we want to be a Second Amendment state and that kind of thing. So that's all. Thanks.
I can't speak to any difference. I can just tell you that the purpose of this bill, there are active attempts in Washington now to impose new firearms restrictions, and so the purpose of this resolution is to simply stand with the people of Michigan who I think very strongly support and believe in the individual right to keep and bear arms, and to observe that there are some powers granted to the federal government, but those not granted to the federal government are retained by the people in the states, as the 10th Amendment says.
And I agree 100%. I just want to note the difference if you added something or something a little bit more intense or something, so.
Yeah, I couldn't say. I did not use that resolution as a template or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Eisen.
And just for the benefit of the public, the good representative before us was not in the legislature during the opportunity to vote on the previous resolution in 2019. Are there other questions? Yes, Representative.
Just a statement. I think this is interesting and timely because there was actually just a program on the radio this morning featuring Supreme Court Justice Scalia and talking about his majority opinion, 2008 Heller versus D.C. And I'll paraphrase, but he goes on to say that while he's upholding the Second Amendment, it should not be just unrestricted or unchecked. And he gives the example of short barrel shotguns and other different weapons. So yes, while I support the Second Amendment, it is not an unrestricted, it should not be unrestricted. And I think that the federal government does have standing to look into curbs where appropriate. Thank you.
Are there further questions from members of the committee? Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go along with what your comment was, where Representative Fink was not here to vote on the previous one. I am privileged to be able to vote for something that is in my session because it just got brought up. So I appreciate it being brought for us.
Any further discussion from committee members? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We do have one card supporting the resolution. His name is Brady from the Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. I will now entertain a motion to move H.R. 55 out of the committee to the floor of the House of Representatives with recommendation that the resolution pass. Mr. Vice Chair Beeler makes the motion. Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
On the motion to report, Chair LaFave.
Yes.
Representatives Beeler.
Yes.
Eisen.
Yes.
Bazat.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Jones.
No.
Coleman.
No.
Rogers.
No.
Steenland.
No.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 4 nays, no pass. The motion prevails.
The resolution is reported with recommendation. Since we're on the topic, I would like to make my opinion on the matter very clear. The President of the United States has recently announced he is attempting to regulate or ban pistol braces. As a representative of the House of Representatives and of 90,000 people, I find this to be disturbing, but as a person with a disability who uses this pistol brace to help exercise my fundamental right, I find that regulation not surprising, but inappropriate. And so this committee, if I have the support of my colleagues, will move to have resolutions against that and perhaps legislation going forward in the future. That all aside, we have two other representatives who would like to testify on House bills. Those are House Bill 4030 and 4498. Representatives, I understand you wish to testify together. The floor is yours. Members, there will be no further voting for the rest of committee.
Thank you, members of the committee. This is not a new bill for me. This is one I've introduced in the past, House Bill 4030. And this bill would reduce CPL application fees from $115 down to $40. The costly policies can restrict a person's access to self-protection by the time they pay for a CPL course, which averages about $150. The cost of the firearm, initial license fee, and then continued renewal fees. All of these costs can be a disadvantage for those who are low income or on fixed incomes. I know my elderly parents, they are very familiar. They've taken all their classes for years and years, and they're on a fixed income now. And so I look at this to benefit our seniors as well. Then there is the issue of the state making a profit off of permitting. Citizens should only be charged actual cost to perform the service of processing a permit, not just in guns, but any permit. One clerk stated that she doesn't know what to do with all the money in the CPL fund. There's so much of it, this is her quote, there's so much of it and it cannot be commingled with other funds, so it just sits there. And so we do have Tom Lambert that was going to testify from Michigan Open Carry, but if you wanted to.
Yeah, sure. So my bill only covers renewals, and so renewals are surprisingly even more expensive than the initial application, which is 100. Renewals are 115 every 5 years. This is not new legislation. Last term, I conversed with some of my Democrat friends on the committee, this committee last term, and we found a sweet spot of $30 for renewal application fees. This is due to the fact that each county in processing them varies very differently, from $6 up to about $28. So we're working with the good Representative Churkin last term. We were able to find a sweet spot there for renewal fees. But again, the intent of this legislation is simply to cover costs and ensure that, with our Second Amendment in mind, and for our citizens who would choose to conceal carry, that making sure you are able to cover the process costs is where we need to make sure that our citizens are spending their money and these fees. So that is the quick and dirty. And do we want to go to questions first before Tom?
If I could just add one more thing for anyone that is interested. I did a research report on the fees across the nation, and Michigan is in the highest. We're in the top, so for fees that are charged.
Vice Chair Jones has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a statement. I had reached out to our county clerk out in Wayne, so this would probably pose a huge problem for us. This is just, I'll share with you what she had sent to me. They did analysis on us for last year's CPL renewals. If the law changed that we only receive these $20 instead of $36, for example, it will have an enormous financial impact on the clerk's office. That $16 loss will have equated to $295,000 in the 2020 fiscal year. And so that loss would need to be offset by cutting at least, another 4 to 5 folks already from a cut office. And since people are complaining about the backlog and a lot of other different things, this will only put us in, more people just talk about it more, about the renewals taking a long time, about the hassle of it. And so out in Wayne County, we don't think that this is really a great idea. Definitely willing to have some more conversation to figure out how we can make that that financial hit, better. If we could do that in the real world, I think we'd be able to talk about it more.
So one thing, if you don't mind, a response there. So is Wayne County, Michigan State Police tracks that, puts out an annual data report. I think they're at $47, if I'm not wrong. But that was the cost that was put out by the clerk. So figuring out how to find that sweet spot, I think you mentioned renewals in your statement there. I think you're talking about application costs in general, the first application. Renewals, that data is not even available right now, even though it is required by law. So tracking that down, I think, is important, and figuring out how to find that sweet spot is really where we're all about here. Because again, we want to make sure that citizens and the fees that they pay are going to actual costs and nothing else for their right to carry concealed.
Representative Eisen, Representative Martin, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, the bad guy, I guess, for a little bit. Right now, to carry a gun in the state of Michigan costs you $1.75 a month for the first 5 years. Then it goes to $1.90 a month for the following years. That doesn't seem like much, but maybe that's a concern. As a firearm instructor, CPL instructor, I never get anybody to ask me about the costs. Okay, they're more their issues with the penalties and gun-free zones are the bigger concerns. But okay, let's just say, Rep. Paquette, I pay you $50 to do a certain job. Okay, and it has to be done in a certain time. And then I come through and I say, now I'm going to pay you $20 to do exactly the same job, and I want it done the same way in the same time. Okay? Do you think the incentive to process the applications in a timely manner may suffer because we're cutting the cost? Okay, I don't know. But all I know is a motivation for someone when you cut the fees has a tendency to go down. Instead of, I want my students, or the people that graduate from my class, to get there in a very timely manner, like 10 days. Now, for some magical reason, because we cut their costs, and that extends out to 30 days or 40 days, I don't know. That would be my only concern, okay, is the fallout of this. Now, maybe there won't be any, all right? But, when I go into class, I go, yeah, you guys get your license in at least 10 days, all right? When the counties had it, it was 2 months, sometimes 3 months. They didn't do a very good job. State police are doing a better job. Now, on the money issue, I can't speak for that, but as an instructor, I just would not want the people to suffer because of this. Thank you.
Absolutely, legitimate concern. And kind of going back to your point with some of your students, and if they could pay less, would they? They don't know, if they're overpaying. And so that's kind of the going back to the point on, to conceal carry, there are costs, and if we are paying these costs, but we don't know we're overpaying, that's part of the problem. So figuring out how to find that sweet spot, because no, we do not want to make any kind of delay in the processing. But finding that sweet spot, especially with renewals in mind, is very, very important to me, I believe.
I agree with the renewals. I think that fee could be regulated a little bit, but maybe the initial cost to get it going. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just don't want to see it suffer a little bit from. I don't want to go back to the county thing, okay, where they just take their time, do it. It's a month, 2 months. So, thanks.
If I could just speak to that. The word incentive bothers me because a clerk should do their job. They shouldn't need incentive. Oh, they're paying me $115. I'm going to be a little bit quicker on this. Incentive should not even be a factor. And when I went in to apply for my initial, I filled everything out at home. I was in the clerk's office less than 5 minutes. Handed it to them. They sent it where it needed to go. Part goes to the MSP, part goes to the clerk. I was in there less than 5 minutes. They were very efficient. I received mine within 10 days. It was very, very quick. So I don't have the issues. If I understand that some areas are backed up, I believe because of COVID. But also we have a huge amount of people applying that have never applied before, and they're applying for the first time. And I have heard from women, especially women, who are saying that all these fees are cost prohibitive to them. So I have heard, might be a different group than you're hearing from. I don't hold the classes, but just in friends and people on fixed incomes. So
I will just say from my perspective, when I hand my absentee ballot to the clerk, I don't expect it to count more or any less if I hand them a $50 bill or a $100 bill. Their job is to count votes. Their job is to process applications for concealed pistol licensors. I don't think paying bureaucrats at the county level more or less money per application should have any impact. And under state law, if you file your application to obtain a concealed pistol license and the clerk does not do their job within 45 days, your application serves as your actual concealed pistol license. So that's why it's not taking months anymore, because it's valid after 45 when we change the statute.
Can I comment on that,
Of course.
Chair? You got to understand, the state police are doing them as they come in. Before, the counties only do them once a month, so they would let them build up. And then they would do only so many a month, then those would go to the next month, and then they would go to the next month. Where the state police, as you send them in, they do them at rate as they get them. Okay, that's the way I was understood. So that's why they're coming back more timely. Instead of waiting, only doing them a certain amount. We're only going to do 30 this month, and then everybody else goes to the next month, and so on. And that's kind of what happened with the counties, and I think that's why everybody was complaining about that. So that's why they turned it over to the state police. I just want to give them a kudo because money or no money, but they are doing the best they can in getting them out on a reasonable time, okay, compared to the way it was before. So,
We have a question from Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, a fee for the licensing is a fee. So it needs to be right-sized because anything above the cost of actually producing that license is an improper tax. So it should only be what the cost is by the clerk. Our clerk had enough money in their fund that they moved all the application for everything, including CPLs, but since CPLs was part of it, they built a new desk outside in the hallway in the courthouse and put sconces over top for lighting outside their office just to spend the money. So if you're looking for reasons to spend the money, you're collecting too much money.
Rep. Rogers.
Thank you. I'd be interested in hearing what MSP's position is on this. I see it on our cheat sheet, it says it's still pending, but hopefully we can get that before we vote next week. I also talked to my local county clerk in Kalamazoo, and if any of you have served in local governments, this is an example of an unfunded mandate. So while I recognize that the 115 may be a little too high, I think the $30 is not covering the costs of the fees. So I'd be interested in something in between those two numbers. Also, our clerk pointed out the piece of fingerprinting. So right now in our county, the fingerprinting is done by the sheriff's office. And the sheriff has a deputy that has a cost, and I imagine the deputy's salary or wage is more than a clerk. So right now, to save money, our county is looking into transitioning, but to purchase the fingerprinting equipment and the software that goes with it, because it's not like the old style, just ink on the thumb anymore. It's all electronic or whatever. So. They mentioned somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $15,000 for that equipment that they're looking to purchase. So that's what my request would be, is to find some kind of compromise. And Representative Paquette mentioned the sweet spot. I'm not convinced that $30 is the sweet spot, but I'd be interested in something less than the current fees. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Representative. And it's actually interesting as well with Kalamazoo County. So MSP does publish the data, and Kalamazoo County did not put forth how much it cost them. So that'd be an interesting thing to go back to your county and ask and get more details in finding that sweet spot. Would be appreciative.
For the benefit of committee members, MSP does have a position on these bills, House Bill 4030 and 4498. Sergeant Chris Gerard of the Michigan State Police does not wish to speak, but he is opposed to the bill. MSP, if you're listening, we would love to hear why. It would be very helpful. Love you to come in and testify. That would be great. Representative. And just for the benefit of the members, we do have Tom Lambert from Michigan Open Carry wishing to testify, who knows more about this stuff than I do.
Coming from my background, county sheriff, obviously the county used to handle the permits and the process. Do we have any numbers that you can tell us about the slush fund, how much money's in the slush fund? Because I've heard.
I think Tom would be best to answer that question. I think he's got that.
Yeah, before we get to him, I think 11 million comes in, about 9 million goes into that fund that we could call slushy.
That's what I've heard. It's
so-
about 2 to 3 million
Yeah.
slush. Okay, thank you.
Or 9 million slush, 2 million for actual processing costs, from what we've understood, but he'll speak about it at length now.
Members, if you want to stick around and have any closing comments after Mr. Lambert speaks, you're certainly welcome. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, again, Mr. Chairman. Am I coming through all right?
Not really. Try that again.
Let me make sure I have the right microphone selected here. I believe I do. Am I coming through okay now?
No, it's actually terrible, but we'll do what we can.
That's unfortunate. Let me first, again, my name is Tom Lambert on behalf of Michigan Open Carry. Legislative Director for Michigan Open Carry. We are in support of both bills. As to specifically which bill to support, I will leave that to the wise discretion of the committee members. Both bills are great proposals that go about the same issue in a slightly different manner. If I may first address some of the questions that were
Tom.
asked. Representative Jones
Hey, Tom.
brought. Yes, sir.
Are those the microphones in the earbuds?
Yes, sir.
I think that they may be low on battery. Do you have an internal microphone on that camera we could use?
They should be fully charged, but I just switched to my laptop microphone. Is that coming through any better?
That's much better.
Much better. Okay. I briefly said that we're in support of both bills, but as specifically to which bill you should go with, I'll leave that to the wise discretion of this body. Both bills approach the same issue in a different manner. To start, if I may briefly address some of the questions that were asked. Representative Jones brought up Wayne County. If I may share my screen, figure out which screen here. And this is the state police's annual report. They do it by fiscal year. So this is their 2019-2020 report. Wayne County reported that it cost them $31.08 per application that they process. That is more than the average that they, or sorry, that is less than the average amount of money that they get. If they are calling this whole process an unfunded mandate, Representative Jones, they are either lying to you or they are lying to the people of Michigan. The same issue was brought up for Kalamazoo County, who reported $0 this last time, neglecting their statutory duty to report this fee. However, if we go back to the previous fiscal year of 2018-2019, Kalamazoo reported $34.21, which again is still less than the average that they get per application. Again, either lying to the representative or lying to the people of Michigan. There was also a question about cutting costs and the time.
What was Wayne County in that year?
And this is, again, previous year. Now you have in front of you the most recent numbers.
In the year previous, Wayne County was below $30.
Wayne County was below $30, correct, sir?
And that's what these bills would set it at. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Yep. And again, this does not include the additional $15 fingerprinting fee. That this is just the expense that they get, or the expense that it costs them per license. That's all. Now, before going forward, if I can lay a little bit of a foundation for you here, so that everybody is on the same page in terms of understanding how this works. A new application costs $115. There's a $100 application fee, $26 of which goes to the county, $74 of which goes to the Michigan State Police. In addition to that $100 application fee, there is a $15 fingerprinting fee. The $15 goes to the entity that conducts the fingerprints. When you renew, there's no fingerprinting that needs to be done. And so because there's no fingerprinting that needs to be done, instead of $115, well, I guess it's actually, never mind, still $115. Why is that important? Renewal is less work for the counties and less work for the state police, yet the application fee itself is more money, even though they do less work. When it comes to an renewal license, $36 goes to the county and $79 goes to the state police. It's a rough estimate, but you can estimate roughly 2/3 of the applications that are processed on a yearly basis are renewal applications, whereas 1/3 are roughly new applications. Based on the MSP's yearly report, go back to here, the most recent version, they said that they processed 182,721 applications in the last fiscal year. During that time, they reported $11.2 million in actual revenue. So taking those numbers, 11.2 in actual revenue, this number, or 182,000 applications processed. Again, we go up to the above. It is a minimum of $74 that they get, maximum of $79. If you multiply 182,721 by 74, you come out to $13.5 million, which is $2.3 million less than the revenue the Michigan State Police reported. What does this mean? This means that there is at least $2.3 million of unaccounted revenue from the Michigan State Police. I humbly recommend that at a future time, this committee ask the state police, whether in committee or out of committee, where that money is. If you look at the yearly cost to citizens, again, the state police said that 182,000 applications were submitted in that last fiscal year at $115 per application, which is, remember, the cost to the citizen, regardless of whether it's a new or renewal application. That means that this process cost Michigan citizens over $21 million in the last fiscal year. That number does not include training. It does not include transportation to their training or to the county clerk to submit their application. It does not include ammunition. It does not include the firearm that they wish to carry with a license or anything like that. It is simply the cost to the citizens for the governmental portion of processing the application. For average expenses for the MSP in counties, you take this number, divide it by the number of applications that they process. According to the MSP, it costs them $12.37 per application that they process. Actually, sorry, that's a little wrong number there. If you take these numbers here, these are their expenditures from the state police. State police are required to report on a yearly basis the statutory expenses, meaning these are the statutes that impose duties upon the state police. And this is what it costs the state police to meet each one of those statutory duties. This number here is not added up in any manner in terms of expenses. This number here at the bottom, where they say support systems, is simply their revenue minus the statutory expenses. And so while they may claim to spend the money on certain things that frankly they should already have a budget for, in this country, what we call revenue minus expenses, we call that profit. If you run the numbers, that is this number exactly equals the difference between their revenue and their expenses. So that's why we say that is their profit. If you take their statutory expenses, go back here and figure out what does it cost them per license? It costs them $12.37 per license to do their statutory duties. Again, the counties report what it costs to them. Each county is wildly different. You take those numbers, we plotted them down. As I was listening to testimony, I took a quick average of the per application cost by the counties. Again, this is taking their word for it. I question what they say, but this is taking their word for it. The average for each county is $21.54 per application. Now there's your framework, your foundation. When you look at just the portion for the state police, we've graphed this since they started reporting this specific number in 2013, 2014. The blue line is their revenue. The yellow line is their profit, and the red line is their expense. You can see that the amount of money coming into the state police is going way, way up, while their expenses, again, taking their word for it, and not including all the extra revenue that they're not reporting, is still relatively flat while their profit goes through the roof. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that we graphed expenses for the county. The regression number, which means we tried to figure out, is there a increase or decrease? Do counties get more efficient or less efficient as they process more applications? The R value is that number. It is effectively zero, meaning counties are not getting any more or less efficient as they process applications. You would expect them to become more efficient, but it's usually not the case. Lastly, when you compare Michigan on a national average, we looked to the 25-year cost to have a license in each state in order to factor in both the initial and renewal costs. As you can see, those costs are different. In Michigan, it will cost an individual $575 to maintain their license for 25 years, making Michigan the fourth most expensive in the nation, behind only California, District of Columbia, and Illinois. So with that foundation and with the overall national view in mind, I hope I've at least painted the picture that there is room for improvement here, that governmental entities, both state level and county level, are making a humongous profit on what they report, assuming even that they're reporting everything, which is doubtful. That, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Two things from the chair before we move on to committee questions. Members of the committee questions, I apologize. Would you kindly send the MSP report from 19 and 20 to Clerk Matt Carnegie, and we will publish it on the committee's website?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Chairman. These reports are available online. If you just Google MSP CPL reports, it'll bring you to their page. Well, they list all the ones that they've published.
And then,
But I'd be happy to send a specific one to the clerk.
and if you have a personal PowerPoint that you've used, same thing would be helpful if you can. My remaining question is, you mentioned that the average cost or the average amount of money that the counties have used to process these is an average of $21.
The $21.54, taking the numbers the counties themselves report.
So the counties themselves reported on average, if you aggregate all of them together, it costs 21 bucks. The legislation authorizes a $30 fee to the county. Did that discount the counties that reported $0?
It did not.
Would you mind running that for us and let us know what that would be? If you just,
It was only Kalamazoo County that reported $0. And in fact, when I ran that number, I believe, I took Kalamazoo's number from the previous year to run that number.
so as long as they're not wildly outside the bounds, it's about 21 bucks.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Vice Chair Beeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick question. MSP is not responsible for setting the price of a CPL fee. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. They love to bring that up, but it is disingenuous, if I may say so, because we all know, Mr. Chairman read a card from the MSP, that the MSP does have an influence on that fee.
Right. Yeah. I just want to be careful that we aren't attributing any sort of malicious intent towards MSP, that they're in some way influencing the price of this. I mean, this is legislation. This is on the legislature. And so I just want to make sure that we're fair to MSP. They didn't set the price. Are they bringing in more than they're required to put out by processing these? Perhaps. And I would say, as your demonstration showed, yes. The answer is clearly yes. But I don't think that necessarily equals malicious intent. That's not necessarily a question. I just want to make that very clear.
Well, the Vice Chair makes a very good point. It is not the fantastic women and men of Michigan State Police that set this number. That number was set by legislators. And so if a government entity is profiting off of a civil right, it is the legislature's fault for not remedying that. Now, I will say that MSP is opposed to changing it, so somebody at MSP, or maybe it's the governor, I don't know, doesn't want to stop profiting off of people's Second Amendment right, but it's certainly not the rank and file law enforcement of MSP.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this issue, of course, has nothing to do with the rank and file trooper on the street. It is an administrative matter. While I would agree to not prescribe a malicious intent to the state police, I certainly don't think they're trying to get in anyone's way. I would be so bold as to prescribe a greedy intent to the state police. They knew full well that they were making a profit a number of years ago when they asked for a price increase that they received. They're making an even bigger profit today.
Any questions from committee members? Tom Lambert, Michigan Open Carry. I don't have a card here, but I suspect that you support the bills.
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
support both bills. But we also support the resolution before as well, if I may.
Very helpful. That will be reflected in the record. Representative Hoytinga, Representative Paquette, any further testimony on these House bills? For the benefit of the committee members, there will be substitutes that we will be adopting next week if the votes are there. They will marry the two bills and essentially make it a $40 initial fee for our citizens with a $30 renewal for subsequent applications. There being no further business before the committee, everybody came here today. Nobody's absent. No further business. We're adjourned.